Hello. I want to tell you a sad story. It's a story of disappointment and sadness and regret. And I'm sorry, I can see on the monitor here that my face is bleaching out. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about it. The sun's quite strong, and I don't have blackout blinds here in the attic. But anyway, I went downstairs earlier on to make a cup of coffee while the previous video was taking up my computer time. Uh, Rendering, whatever that means. And while I was waiting for the percolator to build up a head of steam, I looked at my computer for something to watch in the YouTube list and saw there was another episode of a program called Have I Got News for You? Now, some of you will be familiar with it, but others, it's a long-running satirical panel show which involves four people. Two of them are regulars, Paul Merton and Ian Hislop, and they're known for their sharp wits. And they have a guest each, often comedians, but sometimes people in the public eye, one way or the other. And then there's a person in the middle asking questions and inviting amusing answers from the two teams. It's usually performed in front of an audience, and it used to be one of the entertainment high spots of the week. Well, my week anyway. Then, quite a while ago, I realised that I'd missed an episode and it wasn't really bothering me. I couldn't pin down the problem, but the whole show was less and less funny and more formulaic. And it seemed that the funny jokes were always at the expense of a certain class of people whom the chattering classes found frightfully amusing. At one point, it was the Brexiteers. I remember they got all the spiteful, basically spiteful comments. And it all got a bit insulting, really. Then I watched a couple more shows, and then I missed a couple more, and it turned out I was missing more than I was watching. And then after a while, I'd stopped watching altogether. Now I don't watch any at all. And that's because we are what I suppose you could say the Russians used to call refuseniks. When it was Soviet Russia, refuseniks were the people who were refused permission to leave the country. In our case, we're people who refuse to pay for our TV license. So legally, we can't watch live TV at all. Not that this has made a huge difference to our lives in any way. There's Netflix and there's Amazon Prime, and I make YouTube videos. Who's got time for the BBC? However, a couple of weeks ago, I did come across a Have I Got News for You episode on YouTube, and I watched it. What a depressing experience that was, because they couldn't invite an audience, and so the 5 participants appeared in 5 screens, like a sort of fancy Zoom conference. But that wouldn't have been too bad if those guys had actually had something to say. But they made their jokes and their witticisms and all the rest of it without the backup of the audience out for a good time, ready to laugh at anything, and probably, encouraged by signals from the producer. The whole thing was as flat and empty and silent and pointless as a pool table in a lockdown billiard hall. And I was quite shocked, actually, at how unfunny it really was. That was 2 weeks ago or so. So this morning, as I said, I went to make myself a cup of coffee, and I saw there was another episode up on YouTube, and I watched it. Well, part of it. So there it was again, the same 5 screens, 2 and 2 and 2, and then 1 in the middle. And they were doing their stuff, going through their routine. But this time, obviously, a producer had asked them to change their delivery a little. Instead of the deadpan, straight-faced quips they used to make, they were all emitting a lot of forced guffaws and giggles, which no doubt they thought might make up for the lost audience. It didn't. I don't know what it's like where you are, but in Britain it's considered a bit crude to laugh at your own jokes. So the forced laughter didn't help at all and reminded me a lot, well, of the minions of a dictator forcing themselves to laugh at his jokes. The point is, not much of what they said was genuinely funny anyway. None of it made me think. None of it gave a genuinely interesting perspective. It was just the usual snide comments about people for whom snide comments were de rigueur, and that was it. The only time something interesting was said, actually, was when Paul Merton made a play on language. He's very good at that. And that was about it. Otherwise, it was a bunch of smart people making smart comments about not very much. And without the audience, that was painfully obvious. It's so sad that this show, which used to be so witty and funny and sharp, is now, well, just a lot of people afraid to say something truly at the edge for fear, well, probably of losing their jobs or getting buried by a Twitter storm. It struck me as a good metaphor for what has happened to the MSM generally. We see these people on the comedy shows and the game shows and the panel shows, and as long as there's an audience, we actually think we're being entertained, but in fact, those guys are just going through the motions and it's all fakery. They've absolutely nothing to say, or rather, they might have something to say, but they don't dare say it because the MSN grinds them down until they're bland and homogenized and don't offend anyone or don't make anyone think. And I'm really sorry about that because the performers themselves are genuinely intelligent, witty individuals. And once they get in front of the camera, they're turned into bland non-entities. There's absolutely nothing there. Anyway, you can probably see a Have I Got News For You show wherever you are in the world, and you can see for yourselves. They say that flu-type illnesses immediately show up the weaknesses in any physical system. Well, you can see how this particular flu has shown the weakness even in our TV shows. If you want to donate or contact, the information will be rolling over the Graniopteryx as I speak. Please like, subscribe and share because it does help with the algorithm. If you visit my channel on YouTube and one day discover that I've disappeared without warning, you'll still find me on BitChute or Minds. Just go to either of those platforms and do a search for Graniopteryx. If you're already watching this on BitChute or Minds, good for you. Meanwhile, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember that you must keep checking the subscribe and bell icons because occasionally they reset. Till next time.